Hello, everybody, and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl number 53. I got good at Blood Bowl. Here's how I done it. So I've gathered three people together, two of which have been on the show before. We just worked it out 2.5 years ago. In February of 2022, we last talked to No Number and to what was then McNaughton, is now MarkyMarc, a proper grown-up name now that he's a big boy. But I've also invited on GreenskinPhil, who I've known for almost as long, about a year and a half. But his journey in Blood Bowl happens to be about the same length. He comes also from a very competitive background. I know these three people to be people with competition written deep into their souls. And all of them have been on a journey of deliberately and specifically trying to be good at and getting better at Blood Bowl. At least that's my thesis when we start out. We'll see if they call me a liar. So I thought that'd be an interesting thing to talk about. People are always interested in that. A lot of people tell me that what they're in Blood Bowl for is to have fun. And that's great. I'm in Blood Bowl to have fun too. But the more you talk to people that are having fun, the more they usually admit, when you really ask, that whilst they love the teams and the painting and the stories and the histories, that it would be just that little bit more fun if they could win a bit more. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you don't care about your win rate. But these are three people that did and that do and that have specifically and deliberately tried to get better. So we're going to talk to them all about that and just about Blood Bowl in general and then see where we go. But right at the top of the show, before people all turn off because they're bored, I just want to say the next episode I need your help with. Because for the next episode, which will be hopefully in 2 weeks' time, I want to do an episode on the most annoying things people do in Blood Bowl. So I was originally going to title it, it's far too long, but I was going to title it, If You Tolerate This, Then Hand Rolling Will Be Next. So it's whatever annoys you in Blood Bowl. What do people do? Is it saying sorry when they kill someone? Is it not moving their turn marker? Is it just the smell of BO? I'm going to get a list of the most annoying things in Blood Bowl. I'm going to get three lovely guests on, and we're going to work out what the most annoying is, which ones are completely awful and shouldn't be allowed, which ones are just annoying, and which ones really, someone's got to be in their bonnet about nothing at all. Did you ever think about that when I drop the adverts? I would love to have some ideas, or of course come on my Discord, pop them in the One World, One Blood Bowl channel there, and I will take note of them and include them in the next show. But let's crack on with how we got good at Blood Bowl. Not a boast I would make. I think I'm trying to get good at Blood Bowl. I think I'm massively overrated at Blood Bowl because of things like this show and because of my persuasive accent and self-confidence. But these are three people that all say they are good at Blood Bowl. Now that is rare in the world of Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl people known for their modesty. But here are three people not modest. Loud and proud. No Number, are you good at Blood Bowl?
No, I think I think actually that is an over exaggeration, and I would put myself in the same camp as you. It's a journey, isn't it? We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. I've got more NAF shields than I used to, if that counts.
Well, I mean, lots of people, that's something they're chasing. Newsflash, friend of the show and lovely coach, Misspelled Tree, was being watched online by many of her friends. Today, I believe, picked up her first NAF tournament in a very strong field at Thulian's tournament. So congratulations there. There is that monkey on the back about getting a NAF shield, isn't there? Do you remember your first one?
Yeah, it was. It is like you said. It is a kind of monkey on the back, and the first one that I won was when I just come out of COVID, and we were. I think it was actually not long before the first episode that
Yeah.
we alluded to earlier. And I remember meeting a really good player called CT, quite an experienced player with his dark elves, and that set me on the path. And then the next one, all I had to do was draw, and it was a necromantic player, probably not as accomplished as CT, but that's when I started to panic because it was just I just need to get that draw over the line. Yeah, so that was good. Yeah, it's nice to have a few more in the I'm that guy that uses them as reroll counters. That's me. So
Do you have
Good
enough
call.
for a proper set of rerolls now?
yeah, I have more actually. Yeah, because who's ever going to need seven rerolls, right? I mean, yeah.
Now, has
But
that
look, I
come
mean,
from running your own tournaments and with just you, a friend, and their dog, presumably? Is that?
you would think so, but actually, considering I do host and play in 12 tournaments a year, I have actually won them an embarrassingly few amount. So
Now, I wanted to talk a bit about that because I came to one of your tournaments lately and you weren't playing. So you organise them, don't you? But you can't always play.
yeah, that's right. So I do try and organise a spare guy if I can, so that I can play. But obviously, if there isn't one, then I'm the first person as the host to drop. So yeah, it happens sometimes. Happened yesterday actually. I had a guy. It's a 4 game tournament usually, but I had a guy that could only play 3, so I dropped when he did.
Yeah.
But thankfully I was having a terrible day. Well timed for this particular episode, so it wasn't the end of the world.
Um, and now 12 tournaments a year. That is loads. Are you doing that again in 25?
Yeah, there'll be so there's a tournament. Sorry, there's 10 1-dayers and a couple of 2-dayers as well. So we have actually December and January is going to be the two that are the 2-dayers. December is a singles tournament, and January is the doubles event. So that'll be the same next year.
In High Wycombe, which I found had incredibly affordable parking and a lovely atmosphere. So a really nice shop as well, really nice venue. You've been getting good
Thank you.
numbers to those, I hope.
Yes, so the lowest we've had actually was the actually last time out, which we only had 6 players. That happened. It was the one right after Eurobowl, so people were kind of having a break. Um, but the 6 players, 3 of them were myself, Wolfin of Team England, fame, and Alchemist, who's very very good player, and he's won a couple of these one days at my place before. So 50% of the field was former winners.
Yeah, Wolfen, of
So
course,
it's
we
actually
find
really
out
good.
this very evening. I mean, or we will already know if you're watching the YouTube or listening on the podcast as to whether he is the new
Yeah,
England captain or whether it is Yudlugger.
indeed.
2 very good coaches, 2 nice friends of mine, friends of the show, and we'll have whichever one it is on, I'm sure, very quickly, and probably the other one too. I think whichever it is, Team England has a strong future with either. 12 tournaments a year. Has that helped, do you think, in terms of getting good? Is regular play part of this process of really feeling you've got
Yeah,
better
it
at Blood
is.
Bowl?
Like you sort of mentioned there, it helps when there's good players in the field. I'm actually quite thankful that typically we have a couple of decent players in the mix usually. Like I know, like you said, yourself, you've been down. Um, Andy Davo's come down. I've even had Purple Goo before. So yeah, I get some really good players coming. Tree as well made it over for one. So yeah, really really good, and that's the barometer, isn't it? It's how you do against those good players, and um, yeah, it's nice to be able to play a ranked 1-day every month, but it doesn't. Nothing beats really going to something like the NAF Championships, one of the majors, and you win a couple of games, you find yourself on the top row against a veteran of the scene, and that's when you really sort of test yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there has been other people who've notably risen up in the rankings by just going to a lot of tournaments. So whether quality or quantity is something we should be prioritising is definitely an area I want to get into. But let's bring some of the other guys in. Um, Norton, as I still think of you, but MarkyMarc, as you now are, of course. I should use your proper name, which I can't pronounce, obviously, because Scottish just sounds like coughing if you try and do it. Or something like that, I don't know. But McNaughton to MarkyMarc, is that part of your change in getting better? And obviously, you can't have regular tournaments up in Scotland. I mean, it's just, there's not enough people. So you can't have had the 12 tournaments a year. What's been the story for you?
So, so, well, it was less of a move from McNaughton to MarkyMarc. There was a wee stopgap in the middle there. I was lucky enough at the World Cup in Donburn to win most touchdowns with my Wood Elves. And as usual, Blood Bowl community is such like congratulatory, always well done. And they were straight to punishing me by changing my NAF name to McNaughty69, which we have San to thank for that. I've never seen San go online and change somebody's NAF name just as quick as he did on that. Which
Okay.
I said I would do a year of. I said I would do a year of McNaughty69 as my punishment, which is probably fine when you're like either 19, 20 or somebody that's Hardgrim's height. It's a bit funny, but when you're in your 30s and going grey, I'm not sure McNaughty69 quite has the same appeal as it would do at other times. So I was just changed to MarkyMarc. It's I used to play sports before, and it's just a very common nickname, especially with the spelling. So
Yeah, I mean,
that was, yeah.
obviously it's very memorable, and I'm sure it will stick. Is there any aspect of a change of attitude with the change of name, or do you think that's
Not really. So I was McNaughton 4 for all of played kind of Blood Bowl 2. So the interesting thing I felt like was how many people are going to know that I was still the same coach or the same person. Like obviously I was very involved in, like, I was a big fan of Jimmy Fantastic Stream, Artemis, played in Rebel, the whole thing. So there was a brief moment of people going, "Oh, you're him," sort of thing at first in that. But I feel now I've been about the block enough that when people see me or see the name, they'll roughly know who to expect.
Okay, so it's taking the name as you, not I'm leaving that person behind and becoming
No,
somebody new.
I wasn't sort of like reinventing myself as, MarkyMarc and the Funky Funk Bunch if this doesn't go well.
Well, we all look forward to that. A fine, fine band that they were. Now, you were on the same show with No Number
I
two and a half
was.
long years ago. Um, you've got good at Blood Bowl. How did that happen?
Well, everybody in Scotland's pretty terrible, so it's easy for me, right? No.
But I mean, if you're playing in such a weak field, how?
Well, no, no.
No, of course not. Of
I
course
better
not.
cover for that. No. I started going to a lot more tournaments abroad. So I have a very good friend called Juan Fran. Some people might know him as Viking Cop. So he's a Spanish coach. Great friend of mine from Rebel. He invited me over to the Bilbao Teams Championship in, well, it'll be 2002, which is, if anybody's been there, it's a 4-player team tournament in Spain, regularly gets about 600 coaches. And some of you'll get the Italians there, the French will show up, not to mention numerous Spanish teams there. So, uh, realistically, I started going to that every year and doing quite well, having fun, but get to really test myself and play coaches outside of, well, not just Scotland, but the UK. There's the way they like to play their games, different metas, how they play things, and just I felt by doing that, not only did I get to meet all these other great coaches and people like, I know Cor's a more of a domestic man these days, but you've got like Torquemada, you've got quite a lot of the Spanish guys come to the Welsh Open as well that can make it. So it was kind of just, it was a win-win. I got to play coaches that I felt were a lot stronger than I was, but also got to meet new people and get to make more friends.
So again, just hooking
Now,
you up with No Number there. Something about playing in those higher tiered, the tournaments that attract the tougher players.
yeah,
And
it's
gaining some of that international experience against the people with NAFs over 200 or whatever.
the Bilbao Championship I was at this year. I was lucky enough to play for Kipe, who the Spanish frequently call the end boss. I think he's 260 plus with several races, 78 win percent with like 1,000 games played.
Yes.
So he knows what he's doing. Nikodas as well, a very strong French coach, was somebody I was lucky to play. El Planet was there. The Hack Flem Globetrotter guys were there representing England. And yeah, it's definitely for, I don't know if probably me and Tom might be a bit similar in just the size of the countries that we play in, but
Mm.
Scotland's scene's really in the last 2 years since I was on has went right up in terms of quality, tournaments, attendances across the board. We now have Mulligan's Open, which is a Scottish major, which had over 100 coaches in its first iteration this year.
That's
We
a
had
very solid number of coaches, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's it's a 2-day tournament in Edinburgh. Great location to persuade the family. It's a lot easier, I'm sure, to persuade
Yeah,
the
yeah.
significant other to go to Edinburgh than it would be Dundee, for example.
Or Glasgow, which is a hellhole.
Well, we'll not say much to Glasgow, but yes. Scotland, speaking of 12 tournaments, I think we either did or were just shy of probably having a tournament every month in Scotland this year.
So you had almost as much as the small British town of High Wycombe.
Yes. And a very good variance. So we've got a couple of 2-day tournaments. We've got the Scottish Team Championships. And not just that, but the Scottish coaches will always travel in numbers just down south. So there was a lot of us down at UKTC, NAF Champs. There was a group of us down at Water Bowl.
There's quite a few in
There-
London in the Charing Cross area. Are those?
I don't. I think I spoke to a few of them at UKTC. Yeah.
Yeah, the
um,
Scots do tend to travel in packs when they come south of the border. You're right.
Especially the Welsh Open. Just also, there's like
Yeah,
5 or 6 of us that go to the Welsh Open every year, and that's about a 9-hour just driving 9-hour journey. So yeah, it's harder to keep us north of the wall these days.
Well, and I mean, and you're very welcome. I mean, long may the Union continue to give a bounty to our Scottish brethren. Um, this is a Blood Bowl golden age. Do you think that that's part of it? That you guys were, at the front of surfing that wave? Let's bring Phil in on this before we ask that question, maybe. Hello to GreenskinPhil, first time on the show.
Hello, guys. Hello.
Not actually called Phil, of course. We should probably explain that.
He's not, no. His
If we're
name's
talking
Chris.
names, I'm going to have to ask you to explain. Now, I've heard the story, but I think the world deserves to hear. Why, when you're not called Phil, are you called GreenskinPhil?
Okay, so there's lots of bits to it, but essentially, in a previous life, most of my teammates know me as Phil. I was a child of the 90s. Hip hop was a very large thing. Still is a large thing in my life as far as getting hyped up. And the surname Blunt is synonymous with something with Phil or Philly, as you would. So when I started Blood Bowl, didn't realise obviously I was going to throw my obsessive personality into it, and decided to go as Greenskin Phil rather than Greenskin Chris.
Okay. We all have aliases. I mean, there are certain circumstances in which I'm known as
We-
Big Daddy 99, but let's not go too much into those. If you wish to identify as Phil in the Blood Bowl world, I'm sure we all support and celebrate that. You talk about your addictive personality. Your background is as a competitive sports person, isn't it? What the hell are you doing in a nerd game, and how did you get here?
Well, I think there's quite a few parallels, Dave, is the honest answer. So, started off and still see it as fun, number one. So, played as a kid with my mate Jez. And my brother, thankfully, moved back to the UK just before COVID.
Lovely man.
Got some tickets to go and play at Warhammer World for Bugman's Belter, which is a Super Bowl themed thing. Turned up with me Auckland Raiders from the early 90s. Had a great time. Enjoyed it immensely. But started looking into what it was. I guess there were people there who obviously were playing different places to that. Found a tournament in Birmingham that me and my mate Jez went to. And I played this lovely gentleman Tom in our first game, who Stanley decided to demolish my Goblins 3-0. And I've never looked back.
Well, I will interject that I played GreenskinPhil, fresh into the game, playing Goblins, and I was there with a dwarf team with Deeproot Strongbranch.
Oh dear.
The first and last time you're being called a lovely person, then, Tom. Yeah.
It was delightful. Once he'd taken all three ball and chains off the pitch, he was very supportive. Very supportive.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's interesting. When I learned Blood Bowl, I learned on Fumble, and there wasn't a lot of people helping. There was no 1-4-5 club. I built a team with all the positionals, no re-rolls. Thought, what are those for? Probably won't need those. Put them on the field. They got absolutely decimated the first few times, and I picked it up by just watching it happen badly to me. But you've come in at a much later time. You particularly, I don't know whether to call you Chris or Phil or John or whatever. What are you happy?
Whatever you want, Dave. You can call me whatever you want.
All right. Let's call you Phil, or try to. I'll probably forget because that's the one that pops up when I mouse over you, and that's the name I've given you on the screen. When you've come in at what I would call a Blood Bowl golden age, where tournaments are exploding all over the place. There's a lot of people talking about Blood Bowl. There's a lot of content out there. Not just this, but lots of YouTube guides as to how to play, as to how to learn. Things like the Bonehead podcast, which I'm sure you all, rate and value, and the learning it's given you. You very quickly got to a competitive point from a standing start. I'd say probably caught up with these two guys. When 2.5 years ago they were going, I'm getting quite good now. You were thinking, what's this Blood Bowl then? So how's that happened?
Well, I again, not wanting to use sports platitudes, but I'm a big believer that if you're gonna do something, be about it. So I'm not half measures in any way, shape, or form. You can see it as obsessive. I've thankfully got three lovely supportive daughters and a wife who understand that I need to compete. The process of it is being invested. So ultimately, we all like to win, right? You could go around and select your tournaments and maybe come away with as many Nash Shields as you can. I've done a bit of that as well, but the community and what's addictive about this is seeking out where these coaches are, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions and then trying to learn from it.
And we asked no number, of
and-
course, so I'll go back to Marky on this as well. How did you two feel about that first NAF Shield? When did it happen? And let's talk a little bit about that moment.
So my first NAF Shield was my second tabletop tournament that I played in. However, there is a caveat to that. So I was, like Phil, a bit of a sports player before coming over to the nerddom as it was. And long story short, had an injury which meant I couldn't kind of walk for a while with knee injury. And was basically, a friend went, "Oh, here's this Blood Bowl game. You can sit with your leg up and we could kind of play a wee game of that." And then found out it was on Twitch. People streamed it. The Sage, Jimmy Fantastic, Artemis Black. You can play Blood Bowl 2. There's leagues. Quickly put in about 2,000 hours probably in a year. So it was literally just Andy Davos stream one year going on about the Welsh Open, funnily enough. It was at Newport at that time, run by Hawker, otherwise known as Celt. And said it's a great tournament, people should show up. And I thought, yeah, I can get a train out of Scotland and go to Wales for a weekend. And, you know, as an excuse to see put faces to names, as it were. So if anybody's met El Duderino, he's definitely a man you know is around.
And is around as a man. That works on so many levels.
As a very round man.
Yeah.
And to his great credit, I remember, so I'd kind of walking towards the venue for the Welsh Open, and this big, jolly, roundish, bald, England-looking gangster man just screamed, "McNaughton!" and came over and gave me a massive hug. And that was my introduction to Tabletop Blood Bowl, was El Duderino.
He is one of the good people.
He is. And loved it. Played guys like, can't believe I forgot his name. NAF President, Team England.
Lycos.
Yes, played Lycos game 1, day 2. And I was like, "Oh, who's this Lycos person?" And everybody's like, "Oh, you're going to find out." So that was wonderful. And then loved it. So went back up to Scotland, and there was a tournament a few months later, just a 1-day tournament, which I went to. And I was lucky enough to win that. And yeah, that's how I got my first NAF Shield. But
Wow.
then...
So very soon in.
It then took me 2 years to win my second one, though.
Well, I was going to come to that in a second. So Phil, but there we are.
Chris,
your first one. How did that go? And how long? And how did it feel?
Well, the tournament immediately after Tom dismantled me, I went down to one of the Bonehead tournaments, Dave.
Did you swap it up from goblins to something proper?
I didn't. No, took the goblins. Won 3 games. Won the tournament. It was, I think, 60 people because they put on a great show.
Yeah.
To be fair, obviously a different type of Blood Bowl, but a lot of fun as well. But it didn't come with a NAF Shield because not enough NAF registered coaches.
It needs to be at least 12 to get a NAF Shield nowadays. I don't know if it's always been.
This is it. So we knocked on the door a few times and so on. And I've got, again, Thomas to thank for putting on a 2-day tournament in High Wycombe, his red trophy, which I decided to switch off from goblins and discover the delights of underworld denizens. Which,
well, I'm guessing this is pre-nerf.
This is pre-nerf there. Pre-nerf. Surprisingly, over 6 games, they're relatively good. So
yeah,
that was my first time out with them. But
one of my NAF Shields is from an underworld, and then I put them away. I decided that was enough. The shame.
Yeah,
I mean, fair play to these two for winning a shield, and within the first few months of play, because it took me 15 years. So
It took me. I'd say it took me a couple of years, and in the end, I had to. I mean, you've heard the story on the podcast before, but I had to do what the beautiful Gagster said. And give up the dwarfs. As dwarfs, I was regularly getting 2nd and 3rd places, and losing out usually on tiebreakers, even if I'd got the 3 wins. But the minute I swapped to something else, Amazons or Dark Elves or anything with a bit more agency, I was nailing the wins.
That was a funny one that I was going to, sort of bring up in the flow of the conversation, was for people who are trying to sort of get to that next step. It's easy when you start. you always see it on like the Facebook community, like, oh, I've just picked up goblins. They look funny, throwing the halflings and stuff. And obviously there's a gradient of teams that go from that to dark elves, or whatever it might be. But yeah, funny enough, I had one of the one dayers down at my place. I finished 2-0 with the dwarves. I thought, I'll get them back out again. I was playing Alchemist, who picked me on tiebreakers in the end, and his Necro team, and Necro are well tiered in my events now. And he was 1-0 up on his drive just fine. I was ploughing away with the dwarves. I've got the roller. I had a hot turn on turn 4 or something where I kill 3 of his Necro positionals. A really good turn. And I'm sat there thinking, you know what? I still can't win this because I can't score with dwarves like too early. I'm decided to take the draw because like all he does is stick it on a goal and score again. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there are limits on them. I mean, if it goes incredibly well, you can
Yeah,
decimate things, but in large fields, someone's going to probably do the same, but with something that can score more touchdowns than you can,
Yeah,
and has the ability to get
exactly.
those bonus points if they're put on. Like in London, they're often put on, score 2 touchdowns or score 1 within 4 turns,
Yeah.
which is going to be
I
tough for Dwarves.
I struggle with orcs in exactly the same way. I mean, obviously based on the name, I feel like I should play them. I mean, maybe in a 2-day you can be knocking on the door at the end of it, but you can't let in a touchdown, right?
Yeah,
Last week, 5 games, I let in 1 touchdown. That was enough. It's
Yeah.
and I've got to be honest, it's too much pressure for my level of control at the moment. I need a bit of bullshit occasionally, and that kind of team doesn't have it for me.
right. I mean, we're going to talk about this in a second. I want to get back onto this, but while we're on the NAF shields, I have to say I've got a few now, a small collection. I could certainly use them as re-rolls and feel I had enough. I found oddly NAF shields turned out to mean more to me than just having won a NAF shield. Once I could put the S on it, I felt then it doesn't matter how many I
Yeah.
get, it's done
Um,
now.
I think
I haven't just won a
that
tournament. I am someone that wins tournaments.
yeah,
At which
yeah,
point
and not to
I haven't
not
cared
to
since.
diminish anybody's achievement. Like we just mentioned Tree with the first shield, and there'll
Yeah,
be people out there that have just won their first. It's a great achievement, and obviously anybody that has one will be looking to get more. But in all seriousness, apart from, sideline the joke about using them as re-rolls, it's not a joke, I do, but um, it's the process, isn't it? It's NAF shields and winning tournaments is the outcome of the process. It is a barometer, is an indicator that you're on the right track. But we probably all really know that if you look at your NAF page and you've got a bunch of wins and a bunch of runner-up positions, those could switch. A couple of dice rolls. For me, where I know I'm on the right track is if it's the last game and I'm on the top couple of tables, then that's when you're playing in the right area, and it just so happens on the day. That's when it does become about the dice. I know Spence used to have the "there are no dice" tagline, and I like to change it to "there aren't until there are," and that's that kind of situation.
there are dice. I got mine out today. I've got in loads of them. But we'll talk a little bit about what there are no dice means in a second, because it's one of those strategies in terms of maybe how we progress and move forwards. But it's an interesting concept. Certainly at its core, I quite like it. Um, McNaughton, is it important? Sorry, Marky Mark.
Anything you want, anything you want.
What to
Just
you
like
was that sign? Is it being up at the top end? Is it having 2 shields? Is it 1 shield? Where did you think I've arrived now? I am a competitive Blood Bowl.
so I went from winning my first NAF shield at my second tournament to going the rest of 2022 and all of 2023 coming runner up 4 times. Now in Scotland at that time in 2002 we only had 5 tournaments, and then 2023 was probably we got more tournaments. And yeah, there was a lot of, am I just going to be the bridesmaid for the rest of my life here? And there's always, I don't know if it's the competitive part, but it's always, was the first one just a fluke? Did I take the right team and play the right people? because
I mean, I think considering back then and the gap between, I think yes is the obvious answer, isn't it?
of course, because we all I always look at somebody like Dementor who loves playing his Tomb Kings, but is really on a hiding and nothing to try and win a tournament. Depending on if it's a 2 day, it's probably got more of a chance. But if it's a 1 day, you need to get tiebreakers. So there are people that play certain teams that probably puts them at a natural disadvantage. It's very easy before Underworld were pre-nerfs to go get yourself a free NAF shield. I heard down in England, you just rolled up, played Underworld, and won one. I think you didn't even have to actually show up. So getting more was nice. I have 4 now. My joy is I get them painted from the football team of the city where I won them, just as a bit of a memorial thing.
That's pretty cool.
That is
Yeah,
quite
I just
cool.
spray my gold. That's a better idea. Yeah, that's
I've had each of mine painted by somebody different because I don't paint, so that's my little thing.
Yeah, I've got 2 trophies, we'll say, that mean more to me than the NAF shields, and probably always will mean more to me than any NAF shields. But when I felt it was like I am a player, it's probably when guys like I've known Cor for ages. Cor probably a terrible judge of character, if he's friends with me. But it's when people you don't know who you are. It's probably when I felt people going, "Oh, Mark," you know what I mean? And they're aware of who you are as a player, just like I was aware of who Gegster was before meeting him, or Goo. I'd heard rumours of some guy called PurpleChest, but I didn't really think he was
That's
all
just
that
because I'm
great.
a gobshite.
Yeah, of course. But realistically, the real thing that I feel I need to give a lot of credit for of how I developed and got better was I actually started listening to the Bonehead podcast, and those guys really helped take my game level from here as a runner-up to a tournament winner. And if anything I take away, anybody listening, it is definitely the Bonehead podcast is the one you want to listen to if you want to get good.
Chris, that second tournament win for you, that the S on my NAF shields, was that a key moment, or what else made you think I'm there now? I'm competitive.
Hey, look, I loved it at the time, and I don't know if Tom remembers. Yeah, I did anything I've won. I love it. I delight in it. The main change I think is definitely this year. It started actually pre-World Cup, Dave, and we won a team tournament. Myself, Adam, Captain Oates, and Talk in Colchester. It called "Who Wants to Beat Team W?" It was us. But
Everyone. The answer is everyone. But the people that actually managed to was you.
But only certain people can.
So
but
Pete W's home tournament with the legendary Thomas W playing with him as well, I imagine.
I believe so. Yeah, is the case. But yeah, the team tournaments for me is where it's at. And obviously, yes, I'm from a team sports background. I love that. Love the World Cup, which I don't know if we're touched on, but obviously, me and my brother with you guys at the World Cup was.
We did. We rolled dice together. Had a great time.
We did indeed, and was special. Not just as a brother thing, but to be able to. We didn't know at the time, obviously. I'll be honest, didn't know your credos or anything like that as far as the team, but accepted and a great experience together. But we've kicked on with that with the same guys and tactics and theatrics this year out in Italy, Copenhagen, obviously Greece recently as well, and those are the ones that are special. You get to share it with people, right? Not just the experience, but the adversity, the nature of holding your board, I think, as well, is something which appeals far more to me than vanquishing 30, 40 guys.
Do you think it's the same thing being competitive in a team event as a singles event? Is there the same skill set?
No, because ultimately there are probably players out there that aren't suited to be part of a team, and you either get that or you don't, and it's how you compete. So I always think it's better to share things with people, obviously, than it is just to be yourself. We all like being top dog if it's your day in the sun. But the reality is, and I think the growth of Team Blood Bowl, because obviously it's all over the place in comparison to my first year when I played now, is because of that addictive quality. Is that you get to compete together. Someone's got your back if you have a mare in a game, or it doesn't go your way, and yeah, the community's great as a whole. But
It's
if you
odd,
get to
isn't it? Because
share that
Blood Bowl
one
is inherently a
experience,
solitary pastime. It's a one person playing against one other, and yet we do want to pack up. Is that?
for me, it's not solitary at all. So I mean, yes, I'm addictive and I love to win. The bit that's got me obsessed and why I travel and why I put myself out there is the people I meet, both that I get to play with, but also who I get to play against. And that's what is very akin to a competitive sports experience.
Yeah,
Is
now
that
that's
look,
where we promised we would get this one. Is how we get
yeah,
good. So let's start honing back in onto that. So what of that has helped you progress? Do you think? Where's the core in that for you?
I mean, again, not to go into, but you got to be invested. I mean, Tom said process. It is a process, right? So when you start out, yes, okay, yeah, are you picking the right team? Are you cutting out your mares in a game where you just completely throw it away? But I mean, once you move past that, you've got to actually be invested in the process of getting better rather than the results. And ultimately, can you sit down at the end of the game or the end of the day or on the drive back or however you get there and work out, did I actually do well there, or was the variance in my favour? And as you said, it's not chess, right? So the basis of actually analysing whether you're getting better, yes, it involves the prep. I do an awful lot of prep as far as, I mean, again, I'm lucky, right, that I've come into this in the golden age of Blood Bowl. So if you're obsessive, you can spend hundreds of hours going through people's games, viewing things, taking on opinions, seeking out opinions as well, right?
When you say
Um,
you can, do you
mm,
mean you have?
I do, yes, yeah, very much so. But I'm also, look, I think I don't know if I attract it or whatever, but the guys and ladies around me seem to be invested in the same process, right? It's an obsession that you share together, and you get better together as a result. They
McNaughton, do you put the work in?
Yes. I'd like to say probably the big question I might need more of a sort of take of getting good is, I would say, different for everybody. Like, so, for example, the three of us, well, I know Tom is very well being the Welsh team captain at Eurobowl, which on the last podcast we all agreed was the sharp edge of Blood Bowl.
No, the European, but Eurobowl's pretty solid too.
And no doubt we'll see Phil there soon, terrorising people with his orcs at least, because if he's going to play something green
it
and
won't
be
be
on
all
Team England, if he's going to play something green and be on Team England, it's got to be them, unless he paints elves green. But
frogs.
frogs, oh, don't start, because Cor's in the chat and he'll.
Any one of the star caddy teams that seem to be heading towards Hungary.
And well, it was after the first podcast that we had, and Spence was very much going on his, ethereal. There are no dice. There is dice equity and all of this stuff. I quickly kind of felt that wasn't for me. That wasn't how I was going to approach the game to get good, as it were. Mine was a lot more cerebral. I decided what team I wanted to improve with, and sat on Fumble and found their coaches that played those games and watched their games over and over. And it's a very simple somebody said to me, pause at the start of the turn, write down what you would do, watch what they do, and if you're a million miles out constantly, you need to go and speak to somebody about what's going on.
About finding
Now,
out why.
yeah,
Yeah.
why? And that's how I did it. One of the best things I did as well, and it was through Artemis Black actually, when he would do his penguin academies. I'm not sure if they've always. I'm not sure what animals he's been through so far for them, but when I learnt to realise that the end result wasn't the reason that results happened. So, for example, I know a lot of coaches go, "Oh well, I lost that game because I double go for a bit and snake eyes on turn 16." Okay, so why were you needing to go? So again, a lot of people, the majority of, I'd say, non-competitive focused coaches would give you that answer. It's the dice part of the game. That's why I lost. Um, but
The answer is
when
you hadn't got forward far enough
yeah,
in the earlier part of your drive.
and it's then going back to so it's not just turn 7. Why wasn't I there turn 7? But why couldn't I got there going back to turn 6, turn 5, to the point where me and Andy Davo bravely came up to Scotland for a tournament in the start of September to Ayrshire Dominion Bowl.
He has been travelling a lot for his Blood Bowl lately. I have noticed that.
He
Nice to
has
see him out and about.
he also discovered what tonics tea cakes were and other assortments such as Iron Brew, and I'm not sure if that was a good idea or not. But we played. I was Orcs versus his High Elves, and the game he ended up winning at 1-0. But it came down to at the very end we talked through the discussion, and we actually started it. He went, "Why did I choose when I set up? Why did I set up in a certain way?" So what I did was I chose to just set up 3 players on the LOS. I was defending his Orcs, set up 3 players on the LOS, and he went, because then I was able to punch you and start to fight. And he went, if I was you, I would have went on the LOS to force me to Daka. And I was like, well, I don't want you to Daka because I don't want to chase you. If I get you to fight, I get to hit you a lot more.
Sorry, the
And
Dakar, as we're going past, is a shorthand for the withdrawn offence, where instead of
yeah,
actually attacking the opponents, it's your drive, but you take the ball and you run away backwards, away from the line of scrimmage, allowing
and
the defence to come into your half, chasing your ball.
and I went, if he Dakas correctly, which I know he would do, and if I don't overcommit to it, I'm like, you probably still have a 4+3+ with dodge to break through the lines anyway. Just, as you can blitz one, get through. So we both came to the conclusion that we both did what we wanted the other person to do in the game, which was I wanted him to fight me and he wanted to fight me to create the space. Now there was all the dice rolls in between that, such as armor breaks, not breaking, scatters, and such. But we actually went as far back as to how we both set up and talked through it with each other as to why. Now that's great when you play somebody of Davil's level. Now I'm not saying I'm on his level at all, but I was able to justify my own reasons. Now as a coach, it goes back to again the episode last time is I don't know any coach of a better level that wouldn't happily, unless there's like a quick race on lunch, which they would probably come back to you, that would have a sit and have a chat with you if you were willing to genuinely sit there and receive and understand what they were saying and not just go, yeah, but you rolled dice. Because if I was that coach and I was going to spend 20 minutes talking to you at the end of the game to help you understand things and you went, yeah, but you just rolled sixes better than me, I would be less inclined to do so had we played again. But I would say 99% of the coaches, if you come across genuinely as wanting to prove, would sit there and do it with you, which I think is a key factor that whether people are not sure because they don't know the person. I know it's easy for like me and Tom, who have been around for a long time, to sit like we'd feel comfortable saying to Cor or a gangster or yourself. It's easy to maybe sit there and say like we feel comfortable enough to do that. But I would say to anybody listening, just ask because yes, I agree with you in a certain sense about we're all there on our own to do well, but I would say that Blood Bowl is a social game followed by competitive. And one of the things I throw in about
Yeah.
what Phil was saying was the reason I think team tournaments are so fantastic is it doesn't matter the strength of your team, the way the seeding works, such as sitting on top board or bottom board, is your team results should get you to the levels you should be. But just because you're perhaps a poorer level coach doesn't mean you're going to get pumped on board one. You should get competitive games every game, as it were. Which is why I think team tournaments are fantastic. And I don't know if that was perhaps one of the reasons. I know you've taken a few podcast teams, PC, for the first experience of tabletops to the UKTC and stuff like that. Is you find your level, and it's not just a day of playing board ones.
Yeah, I mean, I've somewhat always resisted trying to go on uber competitive teams because I'm not a member of a league, and I've just always thought it'd be nice to take other people that want to go. So I've always gone with slightly random people, which has always been fun, and I don't regret it. but I'm aware that I could have, signed on to some more competitive-based teams. That hasn't always necessarily been something I've been desperately trying to do. I like to play competitively in the game in front of me, but not necessarily with the meta. But maybe that's changing. I don't know. I certainly enjoy competing in the singles, and I love tournaments for teams. It's just I've never really felt I want to go and sort of try and dominate them, as it were. Tom, hard work, preparation, talking to people, practicing things. This all sounds. I mean, isn't it important to look like you're not trying very hard when you're good? Isn't that part of the mystique? Isn't that what makes you cool?
Ask Team England till that went in Greece, eh? I had to get that
To
one
be
in.
honest with you, I think that what my major problem was the mentality of Blood Bowl and the worst end of things. And I'm still not perfect now. By all means, like I've said, this episode is about being good, but there's a lot of way to go. I think
Yeah.
all four of us can accept that we are not the top level of Blood Bowl coach in the world.
I said good,
There is
not
still
great.
there's still a few echelons to go. But just touching on basically what MarkyMarc said a moment ago about sitting down and chatting to the other people.
Yeah.
One, everybody will share, because if if they're someone that you think you can glean some information off of, they are more than willing to share it, because no one of that stature in Blood Bowl is afraid of making opponents better, because that's who we want to play. We want to play better coaches. But reading back again to something Chris said about that decision to invest, that's it's a long process, but the decision is a momentary thing that you have to decide yourself. I don't know if you've ever heard players say something along these lines of, "Oh, I like playing in the mid board. I like playing on table 30 plus or whatever it is, because that's where the fun is, or the bottom tables,
Yeah.
that's where the fun is." And they say, "Oh, are the guys at the top level even having fun?"
I didn't manage to go
And
to the
y-
UKTC this year, but the last couple of times I did, it was split into two rooms because of its size. And there was very much a sense of pride of, in the second room, the lower room, we're the ones having fun.
Yeah, because you're
yeah,
not winning. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
I,
the thing is, there's for some reason, I think people like to believe that the better players are not enjoying themselves, and that's a kind of a little thing they like to embrace themselves with before they make the decision that they want to get better. That there's a level that they can achieve if they want to.
I think they probably get done with their game, right? They walk up top end of the room, see it all looks incredibly serious, and therefore it can't be fun. And
Yeah,
I think this is again a beauty of the hobby as well, right? Is that fun is what it is to you.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely fine. People taking crazy stuff and doing if that's fun, if that's legitimately fun. I think
The role
sometimes
players, the
perhaps
painters, the hobbyists, they have absolutely a place at
it
every tournament.
is huge. Is huge, and is something that makes it as delightfully diverse as it is, right? But I can only speak personally that the most fun I've had is at places like Tillian when you're under pressure against Italians who absolutely have come there to eat your lunch, right?
Yeah.
Or in Greece, it's what fun means to you. And yes, you might look like you're concentrating like hell at the time, or you're not smiling, laughing. But that's if you're competitive, that's where you want to be. That's what you've worked for to get there, I guess.
I think as well, if I could just jump in, is
Sure.
one of the biggest changes I saw, and I don't know, it'd be interesting if Phil and Tom find this in their areas, is I find coaches don't want to lose over winning. So a lot of coaches I know up in Scotland will go, I'd rather just get the draw. Like they'll never win a tournament with that. Like there's a lot of one-day tournaments in Scotland. They're never going to win a one-day tournament going 2-1-0. Never going to happen because there'll always be. But they'd rather sit across the board and go, "Well, I didn't lose,"
yeah.
than rather
I
lose
I
getting the win.
remember playing a game. It's funny, especially when you go to one of the larger events like NAF Champs, where it's 3 points for a win, and basically if you draw a game, you're out of the tournament. Essentially, you're not going to win the tournament. And to play someone who is they're happy with a draw, and it's so hard. I remember playing because last year the Nurgle team got bumped down to the bottom tier, didn't they? So there was a few more Nurgle teams, and normally you come across a Nurgle team, you think, okay, I was playing undead. You think I'm probably in the driving seat in terms of the percentage, just off the bat of the teams.
You should
But
win
when
that game.
ball,
Just say,
when
you
that
were winning. You're sitting there going, I'm beating Nurgle all
Well,
day
yeah,
long.
but when that ball is on in the hands of a pestigore in a cage of Nurgle warriors behind some more stuff, you're like, yeah, I don't really know how I'm going to dig that out, and you don't really care about God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
But it's each to their own. That's absolutely fine. For a lot of people, actually, a couple of the best results or best feelings I've had in the last couple of years are games that I've just drawn because something has gone really bad, and I've just had to just remain calm and think, let's just get some result out of this. So they now I'm at the point where that's as pleasing as getting a shield because I know that my mentality is right, and for me that was all the analytics and playing online more and watching more, absorbing more content. That's something I have to improve on. For me, the my worst enemy is myself still sometimes. So that's the part that I chose to improve on first. So I think
Okay,
if I got
so
to the place I
are
am
we coming
now
back to the
without doing that
legendary
stuff,
quote from
then
Dimmy G that what one really needs to win? Asking how does one sit down at a game and beat Purple Goo, and the answer he came out with is confidence. Is that
yeah,
is it a big factor? That belief, and not just self-confidence, but
yeah.
genuine belief in your ability with Blood Bowl to play anybody that sits down opposite you. Is that
Yeah, I think there's a couple of guys in the Welsh squad who are excellent players, and I genuinely think the problem they've got is that they respect the other coach too much. It's someone that they've seen on Fumble, and it's a name, and maybe my problem is I don't respect people enough. But that certainly works the other way as well. And some people just need to have more faith in themselves, I think.
RESPECT? Find out what it means to me. MarkyMarc, do you respect
Yeah.
others? Is that important?
There's the obvious answer of yes, of course I respect others. This is a one world, one Blood Bowl message.
Of course.
But no. I would say first of all, I'd say there's different types of confidence. There's confidence that I would say coaches that perhaps don't have the skill level to back up because they maybe play in a league and think, I know what I'm doing, and don't understand the level they're now playing at. I would say one of maybe NAF Champs is probably the best example I could give, just how it's such a wide field. The World Cup was probably the next best example of it. I would say I personally, as a coach, would say I don't care who I'm playing because I would have confidence that I should be able to score my drive. I'm that good. I'm a good enough player. I've gotten good that I should be scoring my drive unless like blitzes happen. But then again, did I do my best to mitigate that? You take the dice out. I should be scoring on my drive. The person across from me should be scoring on their drive. And it's what happens in the middle of that. So you sit against core,
I'm
you
not
know,
sure I accept that the person opposite me should be just scoring on their drive.
but if they're just as good as you, they should be going, well, I'm going to score against
Who
PC.
fuck's that then?
So you can't I would say there's difference in having confidence in your own ability to go, I don't care if it's Goo, Gegster, Core, Davo, I know I'm going to score my drive. It's can they score on their drive? I'll do my part of the job. But then I do think, as well as Tom was saying, too much respect for coaches. I do think that can be a problem. But again, if you have the confidence in yourself, it doesn't matter how nice you are to the person. If you want to fawn over Cor and his lovely hair, you can do. But
You'll do it from underneath. You won't be doing it. You won't be fawning over him. You'll be
no,
fawning
I'll
very
do it
much under him. The man is
looking up at him.
6'8".
But I just think if what you're wanting to do is play at the top end against the top coaches, you all respect each other anyway. Like I've never played anybody that I would say isn't a respectful player.
Okay.
That I've sat down and played. I've seen them at
Phil, who
tournaments.
is Chris, who is John, who has a brother who's called Paul.
He is.
Respect for others. Is it important? Can we have too much?
Got to be in competition, full stop. So I think, I mean, again, I'm lucky, I suppose, in a way that I've been, at least in this competitive sphere, for a short amount of time. However, I think, I mean, Carl says it's to me an awful lot of the time. I probably struggle, I think, sometimes against lesser rated coaches, I think, in a tournament format. If I haven't brought a baseline level of respect because of the variance that is involved in the game. So it is quite easy to get up for a game against Andy, right? It's quite easy to get up for a game against Core. The the consistency that you've got to have is respect for every opponent that sits across.
So you've got to
from
bring
you.
your Man City game against Brighton and against Plymouth.
Well, I don't think I do, and they talk about holes in my game currently. I think when the I'm kind of different, I suppose, that when the pressure's on, I probably focus an awful lot better than I do if it's Saturday morning in wherever. And I again, as in terms of the process of getting better, it's important to realise that and make sure that you are trying to bring your A game every time you sit down.
So both when you are facing someone where you're going to absolutely need it, but also against someone where you sit down and think, yeah, this is, they're playing Nurgle, should be fine.
Definitely right, because that's when you start flipping positionally. That's when potentially you're not, because high variance coaches will roll high variance stuff, and sometimes that's going to blindside you if you're not in the correct position. So I think in any type of competition there has to be a base level of respect to start off with, because the person is sat there competing against you, and therefore, regardless of skill level, they're coming to take your stuff, right? And it's up to you whether you want to give them that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm minded of several anecdotes. A couple of them told on the podcast before. The famous Jimmy Fantastic one at the NAFC. He's recently won a fumble major. Decides he'll go to the NAFC, sits down. His opponent turns up. He sits down and says, "Yeah, you've probably heard of me. I've recently won a fumble major. I've got a channel on YouTube. I'm Jimmy Fantastic." And the other person sits down and goes, "Oh, that's nice. I'm Purple Goo."
Yeah.
And
I think
when Jimmy tells it, you can just hear that his face dropped and his belief dropped. Which is the bit I find the most interesting about that. He was trying to assert dominance. He ends up being the beater in that situation.
but that's the
Well,
difference, right? It's trying to assert dominance. That's not confidence.
Right.
No,
So
it's fake confidence. Fake confidence.
So I sat down, like by luck of draw, I sat down board one against the French in Athens. Team Scotland, luckily and greatly, got paired against Team France round one, and I sat across Burpif. So anybody that knows anybody knows who Burpif is. He sat down, he brought out his 3.5 shields for his turn counter movement and score, and then he brought his 3.5 shields out for his re-rolls for a total of 6. And I kind of had a wee chuckle to myself because I thought of Tom, because I'd recently played Tom at the Welsh Open with his undead and did the same, and had a wee chuckle with him. And I knew who Burpif is, but I knew to respect. But again, I had confidence in my own ability. The one thing I'd kind of like to go back to is, I think it's all well and good wanting to be good at Blood Bowl. I think you have to be good at losing at Blood Bowl as well, because if you can't lose in the right way, you're never going to learn why you lost as well. And there is a way to be respectful in the way you lose. Like, I hate saying his name because his head's big enough as it is, but Cor is a man who I've seen love a game of Blood Bowl and treat his opponent the same, regardless if he beat him 5-0 or lost 5-0.
It does, of course, help that he's won 80,000 tournaments,
Yeah,
several NAFCs, and is widely regarded as the best Blood Bowl player on earth. That brings you a sense of confidence that,
True, but you're not faking that niceness all the time. Because every time I do see me,
right. Like, second anecdote. Let's bring the others in on this. How relevant is this one then? So I'm at the Europen. Round one, our team does bizarrely well, despite the draw, the win that was stolen from me by timing. I get a draw, but the other 3 boards win. So we get quite a high seeding. We spin into Team Althea. Quite a well-known, very decent set of Italian coaches. I get the draw. I think, well, at least I'm on board 4. I should have a fairly easy game, get my mojo going. And it comes out, and the name is Panico Black. Again, those that know your international Blood Bowl players, you'll have heard of Panico Black, a very, very seasoned, very good Italian player. The whole of Team Alfea is. Jena and the likes are on there as well. And do you know what my first thought was? That's unlucky. That's a very good coach. And then I thought, and he's just looked and thought, I'm playing the fourth board on this completely unknown team. That's PurpleChest. That's unlucky.
I thought you said, who is that?
No, I don't think he did. Now, maybe that's my arrogance, but, I mean, we'd played each other before, so I know he knows who I am. We've played at the UKTC. But is that arrogance, or is that self-belief? Is that the confidence you need in those sort of situations? To sit down thinking, I don't think I'll win every game I play, but I do genuinely think there is no one on this earth that I won't give a decent game of Blood Bowl to. Is that an essential base setting, or is that...
It's a mindset setting. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. And I think one of the lads, it might have been MarkyMarc mentioned there. Sometimes you'll go to a tournament, you'll get a guy come along it's actually his first NAF tournament, but he's won a couple of his local leagues and he thinks he's quite good and great, welcome to the scene. And they quickly find out that even if you're at a one dayer that's populated by a couple of guys that have been around the circuit for a while, it's quite a jump. But probably I'm at a level now where I think that look, there's you look at the NAF rankings, there's hundreds of players that are better than me, statistically speaking. But I think, like MarkyMarc said, I'm probably at a level now where I could score my drive at least, and then see what happens against anybody. I had at Eurobowl, we had a decent shift this time with Team Wales. But the last round was against Lithuania, and on top board, I was playing Mankis, as you would probably expect against Lithuania.
The one good player in Lithuania.
Well, I don't
I've
know.
said it.
That's
You don't
what
have to
I
agree.
deal with anyway. Excuse me. So, anyway, he scored his drive. It's Dark Elves versus my Amazons. And I make the decision, the very uncaptainly, un-Team Blood Bowl decision, about halfway through my drive. I checked down the board. Everybody seemed like they were doing okay. I thought, I'm going to try and win for my own ego, I suppose.
Selfishness, yeah.
And so I popped the touchdown in. I say, let's play Blood Bowl. And he said, gladly. And then he won.
I do think what you're saying, though, PC, there's a difference between mindset that you have in yourself and the persona of that mindset you have your opponent deal with. So I will say, for example, we all know there's a certain English player that perhaps has the reputation of being a bit of a prickly persona, a bit of a very stoic, serious-looking player.
No idea who you mean, but let's carry on presuming I do.
Okay. Personally,
just one.
Well, based on certain things, maybe more now. But it's okay going, I believe I'm going to beat this person, or I should be winning this game, or I'm going to score my drive. But I also feel that there is an unspoken contract of communication and socialization that's expected. Like, you're not there to make your opponent feel bad or miserable, or you're sitting there going, "Oh, you did a shit drive, or that was a shit block there."
I have had, particularly Frenchmen, cheer in my face whilst pumping fists that I've rolled a 1. You telling me they're not there to watch me feel bad? They absolutely were.
Yeah. But I wouldn't class that as the thing. Now, I've sat in Bilbao, and there was a team in Bilbao, the Boom Shakalaka team, and every time they casualtied one of your players, they would scream Boom Shakalaka. Right? And now I know some coaches that hated that because they're actively being a dick and cheering. I played them the last round and decided when I casualtied their players, I would stand up and shout Boom Shakalaka in their face. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Now,
I did once, I have to confess, once again, I've just been called in chat. I did once celebrate somebody snaking with similarly French fist pumping and yes, when it was their snake. I did do that. It was because
I
I
don't think there's
believed it
anything
might have
wrong
given
in
me a
doing that.
NAFC win, which in the end was robbed from me by an appalling tiebreaker system.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Like, if my opponent did that, I wouldn't think anything less of them if
Been there, done it.
if the rest of the game had been in that social contract. Because obviously you all want to win. Like, if you're playing the final of NAF Champs and your opponent like rolls a snake eyes for you to win the game, of course you're going to want to celebrate it.
Yeah,
But
perfectly
have you
reasonable.
been a dick to your opponent for the 15 previous turns?
No,
Is a difference.
massively
It's
important.
That's
if
the
it's
difference.
out of character, right? It's
Or a
I've got
celebratory
no.
moment.
Yeah, I've got no problem reflecting my opponent, right? So if you want to shout, and great, let's do it. No,
But if
no
you throw
problem
your
at
dice
all.
cup, I think you're a dick. John.
Yeah. I mean,
Especially John.
that kind of stuff is
You're not good enough to do
should be
But
that.
outside
isn't
of
it important just to roll into town like Core, never looking like you've even picked up a Blood Bowl board for 6 weeks, sit down, roll dice in 3 or 4 seconds, finish all your turns early, and still win?
But
I mean,
that's
this all sounds a lot of try hard. Are we saying that success at Blood Bowl, outside of the insane few with just broken minds, that success at Blood Bowl actually comes through hard work, repetition, getting
but
good advice from those that are good at it, and
how
self-belief
many
and
reps
confidence in
have
your own
they had?
ability?
How many reps have they had though, Dave? They've been playing for decades, right? Thousands, if not tens of thousands of games.
Yeah.
That confidence and that demeanor comes from their reps, the people they've played against, making mistakes and analysing those mistakes.
Because
So
when people ask me if I've practiced before big games, I sort of go, yeah, I've practiced this game 9,000 times. I've practiced.
I've seen you. You sit in the car park rolling the dice to see which ones roll 5s and 6s, and you keep them and get rid of the others.
No, there have been occasions where I have, if it's a matchup I don't feel, 100% au fait with, then I have played it online or I have asked a mate to throw a team up against mine. But a lot of the time I do feel, with the level of reps I've got, that I feel prepared. If I don't feel prepared, then I do something about it.
so for me, right,
I feel I'm capable of taking that decision.
I'm playing catch up, right, in
Yeah.
comparison to, and a lot of the guys around me are probably playing catch up as well. So I think the only way, apart from putting yourself out there to be in those uncomfortable positions and playing you guys, is to put in the work. That is reps. That is traveling. That is making sure that you're trying to go to the places with the right coaches and then sitting down afterwards and analysing the good, the bad of it.
Now, one of the reasons we spent some time on this is I mentioned it, hinted at it darkly rather than directly talked about it during the last one of these. I don't know if you watched it through or not. I don't expect you to have done. But I'd heard a rumour that Team England, particularly in the first round or two, the 4 new caps, sat there looking like rabbits crossing the road in Watership Down, with big wide eyes, and people opposite them they'd heard of, and maybe not feeling or looking as if they felt prepared for those matches and those games. And of all the things I heard about Team England in Athens, that was the one that worried me the most, was that here were people of the quality, certainly with a good enough record to play for Team England, but seemingly lacking that belief when they sat down opposite people. Does that seem fair?
And if I could
Does
just,
that worry you?
if I could just bring in the sort of similar situation we had on Team Wales. We had Michael Jones, who was Lyracy on NAF. He changed his NAF name to Michael Jones. A lot of name changing these days, isn't there?
Yeah.
We had
You're going to get
Orkster.
a number, Tom.
What's that?
Are you going to get a number?
One.
No.
Keep changing it on your national mate.
And we had Bert Mack who stepped in, for another debut. And what we told these guys was that all capable players. We have a qualification system on Team Wales now, where basically they had to get on the team by winning tournaments. It wasn't just I went you. So they've won
Just give you a
games.
quick
They've
one
won
round the back of
shields.
Tesco's. It had to be genuinely earned.
It had to be genuinely earned, and but there is that element of this is a step up. This is where you'll be playing better players than you've probably played typically month by month. But one thing we haven't really covered about Team Blood Bowl is actually a draw can be fine. And as MarkyMarc mentioned before, if you can just do your drive.
Yeah.
So that was the message. It was like just receive the ball, do your drive, and then see what happens. And actually, we ended up with a situation where we did okay as a team. We actually lost as many games individually as the champions France did. We just ended up drawing a lot of games, but that was the message we put out. So, yeah,
Please get draws, and then we were
that little
completely
bit.
ruined by our draws.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we did twice as good as we did in Malta, so actually it
So
was a
surely
vast
the message
improvement.
next
But
time is wins.
yeah, try and bump that up. But it was a good. I think it was a good method of easing into the level of competition for the new guys. Certainly.
Now
I think
let's leave that. I think we
sorry,
spent
Stacey,
plenty of time on that. So, sorry, anything you wanted to come in on, Marky Mark,
Yeah.
before I move on?
Can I just jump quickly on that? Just so I think it's hard for, in the nice possibility, for me and Tom to sit there and kind of feel what the Team England guys feel, because our nation still had completely different objectives than Team England did at the Euro Bowl.
Yeah.
Remember, this Team England came on the back of a rough Malta that were very much a new captain, a new way of picking the team. And the Euro Bowl is the top. You are arguably playing every game, at worst, the eighth best coach of that country. Now, you might not be the best, you might not be the eighth best coach in your country, but arguably that's what you're playing. And you're playing that every game, every round, where it's not like it's a team tournament like NAF sees. There's a reason why it tends to be the Italian or the French that come over that tend to either be first or second, that do very well, or all the presidents. It's generally the same names that are about there, because they have gotten, like, if you look at Lycos, how many times has Lycos won Euro Bowl, for example, or been in the top two? Like, it's probably at least a dozen or 10, or, you know what I mean? High numbers. So for a new coach to be sitting there, probably with very little top high. Now, when I say high level, I mean like board ones at UKTCs, board one at Tylea, French team championship, Spanish team championship, NAF championships. If you're not used to sitting with the pressure that comes with as well, as knowing you're representing your country, and that you're already perhaps, not one of the top four people that people think should be on that because you're a new cap. I think it's something that can't be helped, but can only be kind of appeased by experience.
I think it can be helped though, right? And again,
How
I
do
don't
you
want to
pay
go
for that
into.
situation? Like, how do you take, say,
Yeah,
for example, the rake, or just
okay,
the rake was one?
Okay, I just want to
Yeah,
come to
right,
Phil, which is Chris,
yeah.
who has a
I
brother
mean,
called Paul.
again,
But before I do, I just want to briefly say to Meth Spores, I know that was very racist of me. I promise you I was joking. It is my experience solely from the UKTC. There was a French team that come there that tend to be very, very competitive and loudly so. So it has become a bit of a misnomer in England that is the French way of playing Blood Bowl. Of course it isn't. There is irony in the things I say. Those that know me well enough know I am joking. I'm doing it with nothing but love, and love for all Blood Bowl in my heart. I know several French Blood Bowlers and get on with them very, very well. I would never wish to disparage a nation. So nothing but love to you and
And
to your country.
and yes, Meth, the Spanish are just as bad.
And the Italians are, if anything, worse. All you get is Porca Madonna and Porca del Dio all the time. Sorry, Phil.
All I was saying, right, not specifics as far as any team, but people have to have to feel comfortable to perform. So you can have all the ability in the world. Yeah, and yes, okay, experience of being in those places is one thing for it, but if as a team you are not prepared and comfortable, those guys might play with their mates or whoever there is and feel comfortable and therefore be able to perform when it comes to actually the time to do so. So, look, I think it's not
So if I'm ever
something
to coach for Team
I have to
England, I
worry
need
about.
to bring a personal masseuse so I feel relaxed, comfortable, and ready.
Not that though, right? You just need to know your team and hopefully put them in the best position to perform when it actually comes to it. And that doesn't happen on the weekend itself, right? That happens in the 9 months beforehand. You've got to prepare that team and be together.
There we are,
I
an
would say.
overextended discussion of confidence and its place within both individual and team Blood Bowl. I do think as an individual, it's just as important to sit down and say, I faced 3, 4, 6 games of Blood Bowl. I've built a team that I'm going to go out and, as you say, try and win every game. I'm not going to accept draws. I know how to get this done. I know what I'm aiming for. And if you want to be competitive, that's got to be the mindset. You know it's going to take 6-0-0 maybe, so you aim for 6-0-0 from roll one of game one, no matter who you're facing. And I think it is bringing that focus, bringing that preparation, having that self-belief and that confidence, whilst not over, reaching it into arrogance or contempt for others. I think these are all incredibly important factors. What about what you've left behind? In the last 2.5 years, you've been on Blood Bowl journeys. You've seen it as an upslope. You think you're getting better. You're getting more competent, more capable. You're going to be up at the top end of tournaments. What have you left behind on that journey? Either as a habit or a behaviour, or is it your friends? Is it your family?
I don't mind jumping in on this, and I don't know if it was partly because of the piss poor show that Blood Bowl 3 is, but I don't play in any leagues anymore whatsoever because I want to be playing in tournaments where I am playing at the top end, winning, events and all of that stuff. And personally, I don't find I let go of the small enjoyment that I had playing in leagues as the social side to focus more on playing tournaments and enjoy that social side. To the point where I couldn't tell you how many SPP it takes to level a player anymore with the changes. It's just, I understand why
Yeah, I've got that
people
problem
like
too.
it. Yeah, I understand why people love leagues, and I was a Rebel league admin, league player in Rebel and Cyanide, and I'd play my 3 league games a week. But if I'm playing 3 league games a week, and then it's like I don't really have time to play, perhaps, on a fumble tournament or get an online practice game in for a rule set, I then went, well, what's it going to be? Because it's one has to give for the other. I'd be average at both if I'm committed spreading time, and I chose to give up the league play, which, as I said, with Blood Bowl 3 perhaps not being the greatest of releases, it made that a lot easier. To do.
Phil, what have you given up? What's been left behind?
Given up. I would imagine some of my mates who I've had for years at the moment probably think I've given up hanging out with them. That's not the case at all. They just think I'm nuts because I've found something else. But they always knew I was nuts anyway, I think. So, yeah, I struggle with leagues. I've played loads of places. I've gone up to Tom's, played in the league there. I'm going to go, my daughter's at Loughborough at the moment. I'm going to go to Wobbett's League, which is a cool 3 hours drive from my house once every 3 weeks. Because I do want to, I want to keep invested with the joy that other people get out of the game as well.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think part of the competitive journey is just because this means this to me. It's a big, wide spectrum, right? And it is, at least for me, at this early point in my journey, important to try and stay abreast of all the different types of Blood Bowl are out there. So I've not given up on leagues yet, but that might have to happen at
You
some
sit
point.
down with the
depending on
necromancer team and you think, but I haven't even got all the pieces, let alone any skills on it. What? How am I going to do anything?
Yeah.
What?
How do these Taurus get block? How do I get block on these? Wait, I have to redraft them again.
Yeah. Frogs are a different proposition when you don't have the 10 skills I had out in Athens, right?
Yeah, it is. It is an entirely different game. Welcome to the
Absolutely.
Gym Raiders that have just arrived. It is an entirely different game, league to tournaments, and
It
progression
is.
to non-progression and resurrection. I
It
would
is,
say
and
the risk profile changes as well as all the skilling and everything else, of course.
And I don't think I will ever become a very big like black box guy. I play on Fumble, but I play on Fumble to seek out coaches that I want to play at and play in a tournament format. I suppose largely for the actual Blood Bowl side of it this year specifically, I have kind of tried to cut out throwing away games to go after the win the entire time. I think, and again, maybe if you've been playing for years, this is something that you get at some point. But I started to realise, I think, with you out of the World Cup, Dave, right, that that if I want to play competitive team Blood Bowl, you've got to make sure that you're only throwing away a game if the team needs it, or ultimately it's worthwhile, and that that will be a continuing process for me.
No team captain has ever told someone off for a win or a draw.
This is it. And,
what they don't want to hear is that board's going to lose.
No, or that they're even in a position to do so, right? And it's fine if you're off to push with a few turns left or an hour and a half in, but you you shouldn't be pushing from go one. I don't think.
Yeah, and I mean that again is about management of the team before the event, isn't it? And before the round, it's okay. Which boards are we pushing, and where are we hoping to find the wins that win us this round? Should be a discussion to quickly be had, not just oh god, has everyone had a cigarette and been to the toilet? Right, let's go play round two. There's a little more to it sometimes. Whisper it darkly.
The level I saw that was again against the French. The French had 3 spare players at least that I saw of.
Yeah, love
they
it.
had now I don't know if it was just Scotland because they knew who they were playing game one, but they had folders. They had my team sheet for me if I didn't have my own. They had recorded what they thought the win-loss likelihood was going to be in each round before the game began, which I was very surprised of how close they had it, being perfectly honest, knowing the 8 for the French and my 7 colleagues that I was there with. They had it a lot closer than what we did. But no,
I'd have put 8 wins if it was...
For Scotland, yeah, me too. But they thought it's bad for a Frenchman cheering in your face. Imagine it was a Scotsman, you don't even understand what they're saying. But that was like 3 coaches there. Somebody was just getting drinks of water, checking games. I'd be interested to hear, Tom, as a captain, how easy is it to focus on your game and make sure you're getting the information?
I take it Scotland had no 9th person.
We didn't have a 9th person.
And if you'd brought a 9th, that would be a notable chunk of the Scottish population that were there. So,
well, sadly, San was doing the results, and he sadly didn't put in results in our favour. That asshole. But I was just interested, because obviously the French had 3 there, so their captain didn't have to care about finding out boards and all that stuff. He was able to sit and play. Which, if you're talking about team tournaments being at that level, you've got just as much responsibility as a coach that's not the captain to precisely be able to evaluate your game board and relay that information. Because it's fair enough going, oh, I'm losing, but is that I'm losing, but I've got a chance of winning? You have to be able to do your job for the captain as well. I just thought, would you have preferred a 9th person, for example, Tom, that would just do all that and come and tell you?
Tom, was there any chance of persuading someone to leave the Shire and come and help the Welsh?
No, it's not something we've ever really discussed. Maybe going forward we'll, but to be honest with you, we've got, I had Gav as my vice captain. He went up and down the board. There's, another couple of experienced players on there as well who would just report the game state for us. What I do find difficult is just how quickly it changes. So, like I said, when I made that decision against Mankits, I went down the board and everybody was either looking like probably winning or looking like probably drawing. And then, history's
following the example of their selfish captain's quest for personal glory. The rest of the team managed to mess it up.
It didn't work out that way. But I think as we spoke about preparing the team to do the right thing, one thing that I don't like, I know you guys used it on Scotland, is the visual.
I'm not a big fan of
the visual aid for the captain, which you might see other teams do, which is where they have an indicator. It's like a green, amber, red card. If the game's going badly, they'll put a red card up so the captain can look down the row and see.
I would not be able to resist putting a green card up pre rolling any dice. I don't know how anyone resists doing that.
I will say that it was a really satisfying moment in one team tournament where my opponent had his green card up, and then as the game went on and I was doing some bits, just to see that green card go down and the amber card come up.
That must be fun, yeah.
You clearly weren't playing me in that game, Tom. It's fine.
What have you left behind?
No, mate. I think a little bit of what the standard Blood Bowl player would consider traditionally fun. I really loved one of the NAF champs I went to where I took goblins and I just got on the beers all weekend. That was great fun. I took ogres one year and just smashed the hell out of everyone and got most casualties. That was good fun. And every time I think it would be fun to do that again, I just can't bring myself to do it because a part of me would consider it a wasted weekend. But I know I'm going to go and have fun if I take Dark Elves and try and go super competitive or whatever it might be, because of the people that I'm going to go meet there ultimately. So I don't really feel like I've left actual fun behind, but there is that kind of devil may care, not really going for the result kind of aspect that I can't bring myself to do anymore.
Okay, so to really try and get good, to try and be competitive, we need to leave behind our friends and family, all league play, and a sense of going to have fun.
Yeah.
100%.
Good, good. That's a lovely message we're sending.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't anyone want to do it? It's marvelous. Yeah, great.
What do we get
think of all those
back
naff
from
shields you
that?
get. You get all those shiny naff shields that you get to put as reroll
Yeah,
cards.
yeah, you can use as
Exactly.
rerolls. There you are. Well, they matter, don't they?
The first
It's
one I
funny,
had
isn't
was
it? Because
metal before all the plastic ones.
I've got
Yeah,
one
mine's
metal.
metal.
I've got metal ones. Mine are all metal. Yeah, mine are all metal.
I've only
It
got
helps
one
that I
metal.
have dashed them.
Yeah.
Oh, I only got one.
But no, I think that one of the things that I think it's important to get out there to anybody that would actually be watching with the inkling that they want to improve is that journey is possible for basically anyone. In
Yeah, get rid of
football
your friends.
terms,
Stop playing in tournaments and stop playing
yeah, just
tournaments and
chuck
not
them away.
leagues,
But
and stop having fun. And you too can one day maybe be quite good at
can
Blood Bowl,
maybe
but
have
not very top tier.
7 NAF shields
Yeah.
and feel like a big shot. Yeah, but there's very few people in our game that are the Lionel Messis that are just naturally can see the matrix. There's one or two of them out there. Everybody else has put the yards in.
You mean you're not lying in bed playing Blood Bowl in smoke on the ceiling?
No,
Or like
that's
a
probably
Queen's
something I
Gambit
should do
reference
more.
is a bit out of date now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. That's an aspect that I need to do better. Playing smoke on the ceiling, basically.
Yeah, there's a point, particularly if you've played Blood Bowl 2, 3, 1, Fumble, Tabletop, where the grid just becomes the grid. It's there in your head. Doesn't matter where the table is or how it looks. It's all. I'm never
Yeah, but
quite
The
there,
worst
but
part I
I
find
feel it's within reach. I never quite got there.
Is that true if you're one of those fumble people that when you sit across from at the table go, could we play lengthways, please? I can't play across from you.
absolutely not.
I like
I'd say,
playing with the
No.
board diagonally. No one
I
else is
know.
comfortable with that.
Okay. I'd say the one good thing I've played other competitive games. I've been involved in Magic the Gathering tournaments like that. Blood Bowl, there's a space for whatever you want to feel as your competitive area, angle, level. There is a gap for that. Now, for example, you want to go to a team and play people from other countries. Well, there's the European for that. There is no criteria of being the best player in your country to go to the European. If you want to
But you
just
have to get a ticket,
fun,
which can be tough.
well, yeah. If you want to just maniacally laugh as you chainsaw the tits off of like somebody's Dark Elves for 2.5 hours, you can go Goblins and bring star players. If you're really a masochist, you can do what Yod does and takes Goblins without star players.
Yeah.
But you can still win a stunty cup. You can still go, oh, I don't want to be one of those try-hard Dark Elf dwarf coaches. I'm going to take my stunty team and have fun. You can still be competitive within that.
Someone
area.
alluded to this in the chat. Whilst we're on it, aren't stunty coaches just as competitive, but they've given themselves an excuse?
Yeah, they're probably the.
In your heart, do you believe that statement? We've had a yes from MarkyMarc. Chris, who is Phil, are stunty players just as competitive? They just have got themselves an excuse for why they don't win?
No, I think some of them truly enjoy that type of Blood Bowl over doing so. I do think as well, it's an individual thing. If they want to analyse it, they're probably some of them masking their need to win.
So it happens, but it's not universal. Okay. Tom, same question, of course.
So just
Yeah, I think
coaches.
No, we're not. We're talking to other people for a minute, Mark. We're coming back to you. You can keep that thought for a second and not speak it. Practice that. We'll come back. Tom.
I think that a lot of stunty coaches, especially when they're new, like the idea of the chainsaw, like the idea of the ball and chain, like the idea of throwing a goblin, but in their mind expect it to work every time. That's the dream that they have, and I think everybody here, and probably a lot of people watching, have played against players that like to think they're there for the fun, and the goblins are hilarious. But when the chainsaw kills itself and the
Yep.
bomber
They
implodes,
take it.
you can see that they're not actually having all that fun, because what
Yeah.
they wanted to do was dice you into oblivion.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're playing for the love, if you just built a lovely team and you want to coach it, if you're enjoying throwing your goblins and you still love your Doom Diver, then best of luck to you. But there are people out there, and we're aware of them, using stunties as star caddies, coaching halflings or goblins, and thinking, yeah, but I'll still win. It's an interesting game. The competitiveness still coming through sometimes, but I need maybe to mask it at times. Now, Mark, you've been beautifully patient. Let me come back to you. What were you going to say, sir?
Stunty coaches are the toxic elite of competitive Blood Bowl. They want to pretend that they're not tryhards by playing stunties, but they're the most tryhard of us
Come
all.
on, not all of them. Some of them are just
Yep.
having a laugh.
No, all of them. Because there's no other reason to take stunties other than to have the excuse of, oh, well, I just took stunties. Because that's what they all say. Oh, it's okay, I went 003, I just took stunties for a laugh. No, you took it to win.
Now, we had a really interesting comment at the very start. Someone new to the chat, I don't know how they've ended up on this page, but they have. Perhaps raided in, perhaps here just blown by the vagaries of Twitch, saying, oh, this is exactly what I need. I feel I'm at a bit of a plateau. Now, I'm sure we've all felt that in terms of our Blood Bowl. How we've talked about the confidence, we've talked about what we've left behind, we've talked about some of the ways we've done it, some of the tournaments we go to. What gets us off the plateau? What there is that feeling. Can you identify anything that you really thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to move on, and here's what I need to do. Here's the step, or the decision, or the moment, or
I think for me the big thing is that they've identified that they're on a plateau for a
okay,
start. Um, really internalizing that and recognizing there is a level to get to, not blaming the dice, that kind of
right,
thing, taking the right competitive team builds, making sure you're doing that to the best of your ability. Um, Paying for coaching is a good step. That was good for me. Might not be for everybody. There are free resources out there, obviously, but doesn't hurt to have one-to-one managed,
yeah. I
education
mean,
at
the
the end of which
145
what it
Club
is.
will get you started on Fumble, the free Java site that does Blood Bowl. Is free coaching. We'll get people started. We'll teach you how to play Blood Bowl. Get you playing other new players. We'll get you to a good basic level. That's what we've set out to try and do there. Beyond that, there are YouTubes, there are lots of content you can try and read and absorb. There is, as the people have said, the research you can do yourself. But there isn't really anyone out there offering sort of elite or higher level coaching without asking you to pay a bit of money for it. So I know some of the streamers, occasionally I do coach myself if people really ask me for it, but I don't go out and advertise a lot. But I know Andy Davo does some coaching, and people talk very highly of that. And several other streamers do too. So there is help out there if you want to get it. But as you say, just being at a tournament and asking advice, you'll find most people will sit and give it for free. Um, Chris,
I guess it depends as well
oh,
what
sorry,
level
let's go
that
back to Tom
plateau
then.
is. Sorry.
Yeah,
We don't know what level that plateau is. If that
no.
plateau is I've given up the stunties, I've taken humans, and now I feel like I've plateaued, or if it's I've got my first team to 200 NAF ranking, and I feel like I'm plateauing. That's a different plateau, isn't it?
But it's the
Um,
self-realization to you of I have hit a plateau. That's step one.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, are we all agreeing on that? I think that's quite important. I do think there's a stage. It's what I think Dionysian was always getting at with there are no dice. Obviously, there's a lot of dice in the game that we play. His point was if you're talking about the dice or how the dice did something or didn't do something, they didn't. You chose to roll those dice. You've picked a plan with that many dice risks in it, or you've picked a plan with less dice risks in it. So what you can control is which plan you pick, which direction you go in, how you try and coach the team. What happens in the dice rolls is not something you can control, therefore it's not something you should ever worry about. You should try and minimise them, of course, because the less dice you roll, usually the better, except on certain turns where you're trying to achieve things that involve a lot of dice rolls. But because they're outside of your control, it's the plan that you should think about. Was the plan right? Yes, okay, you rolled a 1 when a 2 would have meant glory, but was the plan the right plan? That's where you have the control. To me, I think that was my key to get off the plateau was, as we've alluded to a little bit, was stop blaming the dice and start blaming me and start going, okay, well, what could I have done better that didn't leave me needing those dice or didn't put me in
yeah,
that
yeah.
position? Or was I
So you,
unlucky, or how much of that unluck was my own doing?
So you can only
Just
control
to chip
what
in,
you
sorry.
can control, right? But, yeah, go on. Sorry.
This is my last thought. Is that my problem? So don't fall down this route. Is now I blame myself too much,
Yeah.
and my problem now is getting out of that headspace once I'm in it. So
It's a pendulum. I mean, the fact that you've blamed yourself is a good start, but then yes, forgive yourself and move on. We all make mistakes, almost every activation, let alone every turn, let alone every game, every drive. Chris.
Yeah, sorry, I just think again there are parallels, right? So you can only control as a competitor what is in your hands to control. So if you've taken your analysis to a certain point that, as you say, that you've reached a sticking point where you can't move off, you need to look back at yourself, and if you can't find that yourself, peers are a great way for free to work that out. As you say, if you're willing to put yourself out there, the community absolutely will give you games, probably give you some feedback as well. I've had no one turn me down for a game ever when asking. Well, I'm still waiting for you, actually, Dave, thinking about it. But bar that, it it's there, but the feedback of another competitor is huge as far as actually understanding where your holes are, where your weaknesses are, and bits that maybe you can't see in your prism of where you are there at the moment. So I'm a coach away from Blood Bowl as well. I've got great respect for the part that coaching puts into that, and from an individual point of view, as far as your individual journey. But going back to what you were talking about before, from a team aspect as well, I think it's mental coming from my background that you've got 8 or 12 people competing in the name of a team without a third party providing assistance to that. The ability to be stand away-ish from the heat of competition which is going on in front of you, analysing where the actual games are. How many teams have you been on where a teammate's told around and told you that they've got a draw and then it swings to a win and then it's back to, oh no Christ, we've lost that communication can't come from the competitor at the point of competing. It has to be analysed in the moment to do.
Yeah, I do increasingly agree that both playing and managing a team are maybe two separate tasks, and it's very hard to combine them.
We're talking about competing, right? So
Yeah.
competing requires a competitive approach. So ultimately, all team sports have support staff.
Well, as someone who's delivered a lot of management training, I mean, let me tell you that the modern manager is very much the servant of the team. The job of the manager is to say, how do I get the best performance out of each individual? That's not necessarily, shout at them and tell them what to do. It's bring this one a cup of tea. It's make sure that one's got their space. It's let that one listen to their music. It's about, as I said, always being the servant of the team rather than the boss of the team. So a manager doesn't necessarily have to be in charge, but they have to be someone that's making sure everyone's got whatever they need. Personally, I need someone laughing at my jokes and making sure I have regular cold Coca-Colas. And if that could be handled, then I will perform well. What else? What else can we advise people in terms of getting off the plateau? MarkyMarc.
I think I'd probably say is just because you're at a plateau and you're listening to us doesn't mean you were at the same plateau we were, or we were at the same plateau you were. And links what Tom said is realizing that you've plateaued is a very good outward looking thing, and it's very much in line with realizing that there are no dice. It's being able to take yourself out of the immediate rolling or instance of what's happening. Again, like what Phil's saying, it's very easy for somebody that's watched you play a game to give you feedback and say, well, actually, where you'd went wrong wasn't turn 8, it was turn 3 when you'd missed this opportunity, which is easier. Now, I would say if you feel you're plateauing, the first thing I'd say is at what level, at what area, at what scene are you plateauing at? So by that, I mean, it's very easy to play in a local area that has local coaches and go, well, I'm the big fish here, I've plateaued, than there is to say, well, I'm Phil, perhaps at his level, going, well, I feel I've hit the plateau. There is different levels, and like us necessarily saying, understand the dice and all of that might not help somebody that's plateaued in their group of 5 friends watching this podcast that goes, I play, you know what I mean? Me and my mates all play together over the weekend. I always win. I've plateaued. How do I get better? And we're talking about there are no dice. There's, you know what I mean? You've got to be doing this and that. That's not
Coach.
that. Yeah, that's not the level that coach is needing. They're needing the next step. So,
Play outside of that scout hut.
yes,
That would be my advice to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Find at least
big-
one other scout hut and play there.
my
Yeah.
biggest improvement I felt was playing the majority of my tournaments outside of Scotland. Now I maybe played less of them, but going to UKTC, NAF Champs, Welsh Open, Spanish Team Championships in Bilbao, the Berlin Open, you know, the coaches there might not have been any better or any worse that I was already playing.
No,
But
they'd
it's
have
a
been better.
different environment to, well, probably. But there's a different environment and a different way of playing, and I would say, as you said, get out the scout hut. It's probably, if you think you've plateaued, get out the scout hut and see what else is out there before analysing where you're at.
The first time I ever played a Scotsman at Blood Bowl was my first ever UKTC. I think it was the second game of Blood Bowl I ever played. They'd come as the Human League, 4 Scotsmen, and
Yeah.
2 of them had cross-dressed, which was great. Very, very fun, lovely guys. Had a great game of Blood Bowl against them, but I sat down thinking, well, I'm going to win this. Now, maybe that was arrogance on my part, but I always think if someone's cosplaying, there's a good chance I'm going to win.
You sure it just wasn't a kilt they were wearing?
No, it wasn't. They had lipstick and earrings, and they were doing the full. They were trying to be the Human League, so they were playing the 2 females from the Human League. I think there are some behaviours that one can get away from, but yeah, different plateaus are there. So the most important thing is recognise it's there, deal with it, accept it, and move on. Never think you've learned Blood Bowl. I don't know anyone that does, that's finished Blood Bowl. I know some people that have won everything there is to win in Blood Bowl. But does that mean they know everything? Does that mean they can cope in every situation? No, I don't believe that's the case. I don't think anyone's finished it to that level where they have nothing yet to find out about Blood Bowl. I think it's too complex, and I think things change too quickly. I think the meta is constantly being shook just enough that I'm not sure that's a boast anybody should be making. Now, we are rounding up on the sort of time where I do have to let you lovely people go. So, traditionally at this sort of time, I ask the big question, which is what haven't we talked about yet that we should have done? Now, not just about you and your lives and your lovely approach to Blood Bowl. We've talked up the tournaments in High Wycombe, which I wanted to do. We've introduced GreenskinPhil to the world, which I felt was worth doing. And we've explained why MarkyMarc has no longer is known as McNaughton, but now under a different name. And we've talked about getting good, about lots of aspects to do with that. But what haven't I asked about that I should have done? What's left to tell the world on this subject of I'm good at Blood Bowl, here's how that happened? You can have as long as you want on this, but we'll wrap up in no more than 15 minutes, so bear that in mind. But let's go one by one around and say anything we haven't touched on that you're really surprised has not cropped up yet. Let's start with Tom.
Oh, mate, I'm tired now. I can't even think straight. Let's start with Chris.
Okay. Who is also Phil, for those confused by names.
Who is also Phil, and I've been called a lot of things, to be fair, Dave. So it's yeah, I think, I mean, just going back to the last point, right? The bit for me that's been interesting, coming over from a different kind of competition, is how many parallels there are between the competitors. But also, particularly at the moment, because I do have
the links
bugbear
between obviously a mental athlete like myself and obviously someone at the top level of basketball. There's much we have in common.
Well, certainly not the top level of basketball, mate. But yes, a level of basketball, which
Certainly not tight.
exactly, yes, vertically challenged. I think.
I mean, I played a tournament at Pickett's Lock on the cycling track, and I thought, blimey, this has not seen the likes of these bodies before, has it?
But the parallels are definitely very, very common.
Okay.
The bit that I think at the moment, and again, maybe it's not been this size before, right? And this number of people coming into it is, I question how coachable some players are, and that's not me doing the coaching necessarily. Although I've got kind of an experiment going on at the moment with a young man who's doing all right. But the community is so welcoming, but I don't know sometimes that how honest we are actually seeking that feedback from our peer group, and that can be done absolutely if you're moving from your scout hut going out to your local tournament scene, and it can be done right at the top level if you've been playing for years. Because as you say, Dave, the game is changing, right? The game has moved, the meta changes as well, and it's by utilising the people that you have around you, this marvelous community, and maybe obviously from some third-party stuff as well, that we continue to get better.
I mean, slightly to reflect back what I heard from one of you earlier. If I play a game and at the end of it they go, with some better dice, I think I could have beaten you there, and I'm sat there thinking, no, you could have had the dice of Shiva themselves, and that wasn't happening today. Then it's that's fine. Don't get me wrong, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to say to that person, you're kidding yourself. But I'm also not going to offer that person a lot of advice. And that's great. They can be themselves, they can have their fun, they can turn up, they can have that defense mechanism. We all need it. We all finish a game where we perhaps didn't go as well as we wanted, and we think, the bloody dice. It probably wasn't, though. And until you start being honest about that, then you're not going to get that feedback. If someone finishes and goes, I think with some better dice it could maybe have happened, but blimey, I mean, any advice? Then I'm going to say to that person, what you did in turn 4, that's how I did this, and that's why I did this, and from then on you were never winning. That might be more useful, but you don't have to be that human. And it's really important we create space for people that don't want to be that human as well.
Yes, and that's one of the bits that certainly I think I'm continuing to learn is the differences that are there between the community as well, right? I think sometimes from a athletic perspective, we are far too down the line of, okay, tell me this, tell me that, in order to go. Not everybody wants that. And
there's not a lot of people doing the hurdles just thinking, well, as long as I get over the hurdles.
Yeah, and that's fine. Mate.
There is in Blood Bowl.
Yes, maybe. Yes.
MarkyMarc, what have we not covered that I should have covered?
I'd say, and it's something I think needs to be important as well in these sort of conversations, is good is relevant. I think what nobody wants is less people playing Blood Bowl. So I know, like Phil, I know you're more newer into the scene, but in the last 3 years, I would say Blood Bowl's not the same society scene it was before. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, I would say it simply is put, for whatever reason, whether it was Blood Bowl 3 or maybe it was COVID itself, because nobody could play and everybody watched Jim rage at, himself not rolling dice, or maybe everybody fell in love with the Jimmy Wrestling Federation and wanted to meet Cor in a pink bunny costume. But I would say,
someone does need to buy him a pink bunny costume.
Yeah. Don't let anybody tell you what good is, and don't base on what we could say here is this is what we feel is good, and doesn't mean any of the 4 of us are right. I would say I'd rather see people at tournaments enjoying themselves, playing the way they want to play, as long as they're there with the right attitude, than somebody hating the game because they're not winning. I would rather see it stop before somebody gets upset or I get it. People I wind him up a lot. Jock loves to throw his dice cup when he rolls a 1 on an elf dodge, and I say to him, "You're not good enough to get that angry." Pure and simple. You're not Oliver, and if Dulac doesn't need to do it, neither do you. But I see coaches lower down that get really annoyed with themselves, or they'll roll a snake eyes and storm off away from the desk and stuff like that. You've gone too far. You're not playing the game to enjoy it. You're almost in that trap of, and I'm going to be true for all of them, you think you're better than what you are. If you're getting that upset over, anybody could roll 12 ones in a row. It's unlikely, but you can't stop it. You can't stop going double skulls, re-roll double skulls. And you could do that for your first 16 blocks. It'll happen to somebody eventually.
I think at 12 I would start laughing.
Yeah, well, I'd have already been.
It might take 12,
but in my French accent after 4, to be fair. But I just think don't believe being good is the be all and end all of Blood Bowl. is what
very
I
true.
Yeah, absolutely,
I think
and
was meant.
it goes for even in team events as well. Obviously, Wales, Scotland, England, whoever you're playing for, you want to go away with 7 other people or 3 other people, however big a team event is, that are going to be capable of winning the game. But you also want to go away with a bunch of people that are nice to go away with, So maintaining that positive vibe throughout at whatever level of Blood Bowl you're playing is really important because we've probably all played, for lack of a better term, toxic players at every end of the ability spectrum. People who are playing stunties and are actually cheating.
Toxic
There are
elite.
players out there like that, and
I love it,
Eurobowl
man. The
coaches that
toxic
scream
waste.
in your face.
I think we can all agree that those stunty players are the toxic elite, and they're the worst thing in Blood Bowl.
Absolutely.
I think on your next
Particularly anyone
Right.
coaching
podcast,
halflings. Goblins, I give them a free pass, but anyone coaching halflings, they're
anyone
filth.
using Morg, but I think they should be number one in your next podcast. I'm going to put my money on it. They are the worst part of Blood Bowl.
It'll
The
be in the
toxic
next
elite
podcast.
stunty coaches.
Star carrying stunty teams will be there for sure.
Oh,
Don't
Christ.
remember, that is going to be the next one of these. We're going to talk about the worst things you can do in Blood Bowl. If you tolerate this, then hand rolling will be next. I guess to sum up, yeah, there's lots of ways to be competitive, but I want to end with a repeat of the anecdote I've told before, which picks up on what MarkyMarc's just been saying. It's nice to be competitive, it's nice to try, but actually there are times we also just want to play Blood Bowl. When you're trying to be good, when you're trying to win, you do need to bring that focus. You do need to have that mindset. You need to be in the zone, all those other lovely sporting terms. I went to a tournament in London, and on the very final roll, I had 2 rolls to make. I had a 3+ with reroll, and if that worked, to pick up the ball, I had a 1 in 36 dodge out and a 2+ to win the game. Not only would it win the game, it would win the tournament for me. It didn't. I 1 in 9 to the 3+. Now, that's quite unlucky. 8 times out of 9, or if you add in the 1 in 36, even if you call it 7 times out of 9 or 7 out of 8 or whatever, I'd have won that game, won the tournament. But I didn't. Now, I'm not sure it helped at all, but actually opposite me, the person that therefore won, because there was another person who, if we drew, the person opposite me won it. There was a way that someone else could have won it, but by the end of that situation, they'd not managed to put themselves in that position. It was between me and the person I was playing. Now, the person I was playing was a friend of mine, a lovely coach called Salty McCutt, and it gave him his first tournament win. So firstly, I don't mind that. That was nice for him. He's a good enough coach. He deserved it. But as I said before, the moment that happened, my dice cup went down kind of hard, and I swore. And I was visibly unhappy because I wanted to win. I cared about that dice roll. I then stuck out my hand, I shook his hand, I congratulated him, I went outside and I had a cigarette, and when I came back 5 minutes later, I was smiling and laughing and joking about it. I think if you don't care when you pull that dice up and the second one is also a 1 or a 2, I can't empathise with that. I struggle to empathise with that. Why you're at that tournament if you don't care in that situation? But I think if you still care 5 minutes later, you probably shouldn't be there either. Because even despite all of this, I got good, and in spite of all of this competitiveness, remember at the end of the day, and this is my Jerry Springer moment, it is only a game, and we're all just doing it for fun. So care, of course care, but try and find a compartment where you care, but not just too much, because that's actually not fun for anyone else. So there was a couple of people that said right then, PC's really pissed about it. And then they saw me 5 minutes later laughing, joking, and buying Salty a beer because I was happy for him. I was pissed for me, and I was pissed at that moment. But it has to have its, even with all the competitiveness we've talked about, even all this desire to get good, don't let it take you into a place where you're toxic or evil. Play Blood Bowl with love in your heart, but a twinkle in your eye, and a belief you can beat anyone, and then maybe you will. All right, that's been 2 lovely hours. Let's wave and say goodbye like the Teletubbies do. Gives me a lovely point to find in the edit. I hope you've enjoyed One World, One Blood Bowl 53. We'll be right back with 54. Speak to you soon. Night.